Well, welcome everybody to the Y Factor podcast. Today, I have got Patrick Is it Headley, isn't it? Headley?
Headley, yeah,
Headley. I
yeah.
got Patrick Headley. Look, Patrick, you're very welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, Ian.
Well, it's great to have you. So, a little bit of background about Patrick. Goodness me, I'm going to read some stuff here. So, a bit of background. We were actually introduced through Matt, the owner of Cousin,
Matt Booker, lovely
Matt
man.
Booker. Yeah, indeed. And this is what it says on your website about your background. So I'm going to read it. It says here, um, you started your career in printing, sales, and marketing, where you learned firsthand how vision, drive, and teamwork create growth. In 1992, you joined Graphic Inline, which became Go Inspire, as a board member, helping to steer its development over 3 decades. You led teams through MBOs, acquisitions, and major transformations. In 2016, you led an MBO backed by Lloyds Bank and became CEO, and then it turned over 40 million pounds. By 2022, it was sold to Xerox with over 97 million pounds of turnover with an EBITDA of over 10 million pounds. Wow. You're ambitious, you love to win, but more importantly, you like to see or love to see other people achieve their very best. That's why you've started Patrick Headley Performance Coaching, helping leaders and teams grow with clarity, purpose, and measurable results. What about that?
Wow, that sounds impressive. But yes, I mean, I'd like to say a couple of things. It's interesting, 30 years with one business. When I
Mm,
joined Graphic Inline, as it was then, it was a pseudo family business. It had come out of the ashes of Colour Graphic, and it was Ron Welsh and Robin Welsh. And I was very much the junior, sort of. I was young, very very young when I joined, 25 probably. Um, but the key thing really was, I remember somebody saying to me, it was probably Ron or Robin Welsh, we need to get better at what we do, and that doesn't include you jumping in your car and going to London and coming back with a fistful of orders. And that
yeah,
was really when I first realized that actually, doing things on your own really were going to be nowhere near as effective as getting a team to do them. And as much as, and I'm very lucky, as we were just saying in the build up to this when we were chatting, I'm a very lucky person. I love my life. I'm very, very fortunate to be able to do what I do, but it's all through the hard work of other people.
yeah.
And without a great team, I'd have done nothing. I'd have
Yeah.
still been that salesman. I might have been a really good salesman, but at the end of the day, I didn't have enough to support a business. Certainly not a 97 million pound business.
But you've been the driving energy in motivating these people to achieve their best, and that's a skill in itself.
Yeah, I
Those,
mean, it is. And sorry for interrupting. But this comes back to having a very, very strong vision. Ron Welsh used to call it an undying belief that actually, you were going to succeed what you set out to succeed. And if you go back, we were talking about sailing boats. I talk about an analogy about, a sailboat doesn't get where it needs to get to just because of the wind. The wind will blow in all kinds of direction. It
mm,
has a very long, strong keel, and that keel doesn't matter where the wind is. That keel is used to get it in the direction that the captain wants to go. There'll always be crosswinds.
mm,
There'll always be ways of blowing yourself off track. And,
mm,
a lot of people, who do very well, who basically do it by a phrase I call ready, fire, aim. We always get where we want to go with that scenario. But sometimes what you have to do is say, I want to get there. And okay, if it becomes completely and utterly impossible, maybe legislative change, maybe governmental change, etc.,
Mm,
one may have to think about changing the course.
mm.
But if one gets blown, off course by the first little crosswinds, the first little disappointment, you never get there.
And of course, then you have the tides as
Yes,
well as the
yes.
winds. Yeah,
Not so much in the med.
not so much in the med. That's for sure. But
Yes.
the other thing we talked about before we put the camera on was gratitude and the importance of gratitude. And I immediately, and I don't know you that well, I don't know you at all, but what comes across is you're very grateful for what you have. And I'm not just talking about materially, but you're very grateful. And I think that's a very important ingredient in being happy in life. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter how much stuff you have, but being grateful is so important.
I think, I think as one goes through one's career, one has a lot of different influences. And I've had, I've always said it doesn't cost anything to say thank you. And believing that, and I believe in the what I think. Oh, good gracious me! Who did the 7 habits of highly effective people? Stephen Covey. Stephen Covey used to call something the abundance mentality, and what that really means is there's plenty out there that we can all share. If you have a business, there's 2 ways of making lots of money. You can either own all the shares and run it successfully and you'll make it small, but if you sell it, you'll make a
Mm,
lot of money. Or you
mm.
can keep making the cake bigger and allow other people to share in that success. That strategy really was the key reason why we succeeded so well at Go Inspire. There was a lot of people shared in its success and were driving in the right direction.
You've got a phrase on the front of your website, which Steve Bandowed, I can't pronounce his
Steve Vanderback,
surname.
yes, he's the
He said
CEO of
he
Xerox.
says your attitude is your altitude. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I was very lucky to meet Steve, who'd just taken over at Xerox as CEO. I mean, they've got a real tough gig. I mean, let's face it, we all know what's happening with the printing industry in general, and
Yeah,
that's
it's
really
tough.
it's tough. But this guy is he's a real leader of people, and it was his phrase which really resonated. The attitude, it's how you think, how you believe will actually allow you to succeed or fail. And generally speaking, if your attitude is a good one, if you are, if you do most of the things well, that you never do everything well.
No.
You never do everything well. But if you do most of the things well in leadership, and you will, with the right attitude, succeed. And so and more importantly, or as importantly, let's be realistic, as importantly, will your colleagues.
Mm,
So I used to have a phrase when I first took over the business from the Welsh family. I really I used to do these briefings that were my predecessor's idea, and we used to have quarterly briefings, and I was never frightened to share the results of the business because at the end of the day, my view was, and what I always used to say to them, I want this business to be around in 20 or so years' time. And if you want jobs, you will all have jobs. A lot of people don't really necessarily want to be that successful. There's a lot to be said, for job and finish. I do my job, I work there. If I work more or do it at an unpopular time, I get paid overtime, etc. What's my worst fear? My job ending often, particularly in the industry. And I'm very happy to say that that business is still around, and so far I've fulfilled my promise.
mm,
So, talking to people about when times are good and when times are not so good, I
mm,
found it very, very important because you treat people like you wish to be treated in many respects.
mm,
And if the results are difficult, we went through some very difficult times, particularly during COVID.
mm,
We all had to do things slightly differently, if that makes sense. I mean, printing all of Boris's letters to the public was a bit of a boon for Go Inspire. So, we were allowed to keep open by approval of Boris, I think. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So, yes.
Right, interesting. I didn't know that.
Uh,
So, what do you love about your work specifically? I mean, you have touched on some of the things anyway, but what do you love about it? I mean, I'm talking about previous work and the work that you do now.
the previous work, I loved building a business that was successful. And I loved the fact that when I walked into the factory or into the office, there was 3 generations in some cases that had worked with us, which was lovely.
Mm. Mm.
I love seeing young people achieve great things. I mean, and I just, you see, I like people. I mean, I'm going out tomorrow night with, probably can't say this, with a very big supermarket chain, and we go for a curry about every quarter.
Nice.
And we take it in terms of paying. We don't. There's none of this. Corporate. What do you call it? Bribery or whatever we call it. I've got no to bribe anyway for any particular reason these days. But it's so nice that we work together for years, and we can still all go out and enjoy ourselves. And we'll drive home afterwards. It's not an alcoholic thing, etc. But it was the people side. It was making friends. I was very lucky to be involved in some very, very senior, with some very, very senior people from, really big retailers in particular, be it energy retailers or, supermarkets, etc. And really start to understand how they needed to make decisions and how their decisions affected trade, etc., etc. That was both through being in some very strategic meetings and also, very happy to say, employing some of their very senior staff in my business. And that was fantastic. The thing I'm probably most proud of, though, is really we took Go Inspire from being an inline printer producing direct mail back in the 90s, all those things that used to, remember when you walked into a newsagent's on the corner, there will be loads of leaflets lying outside that are falling out of motoring magazines. They used to be blue and orange. I think Alliance and Leicester Personal Finance. I'm going back, and they were the days, of course, when you went on holiday for 2 weeks and you came back, you physically couldn't get through the door. Anyway, blah blah blah. And obviously, we had to do something to change, but we really did recraft that business from being a printer to being a marketing performance partner. And I love, even to today, see them winning awards for campaigns for the likes of, British Telecom, EE, B2, I think they probably call themselves EE these days. Some extremely big brands, and no longer being confined to just being a printer, if that makes sense. I mean, some of the work we were doing around data and creative as well, as well as digital campaigns. I mean, it was such a departure from the business that I joined. So yeah, massively proud of that. Today I just really like helping people. I like to talk to people, like to understand what they want. I mean, I've just finished doing a year's non-exec work with Pure Print. They're a great company. Do you know Pure?
Yeah, I don't know much about them, but digital printer.
Well, they do a lot of stuff. They do print books. They do fine art printing. They're incredible. One of their biggest clients is they do so much work for American galleries. It's incredible.
Right.
They're an amazing company. Got real magic. But it was really interesting because I really learned that being a non-exec is quite limited there, because you can't really do very much. You can only really talk to the managing or the boss person, etc. And it was difficult because I wanted to get my hands dirty and say, right, how can we do this? I think we've put this measurement here, blah, blah, blah. And I guess when I started this business up, I thought, well, I don't need to just do non-exec roles. I would actually like to get my hands a little bit dirtier and, start to help strategize with either HR, the sales team, the senior management, etc. Because unless you get all these things firing on all four, or preferably eight,
they're all interconnected, aren't they?
massively,
Yeah, yeah,
massively,
yeah.
So, and all of that is really rewarding. And conversations and work I've done thus far, it's been great. And um, I hope that there's a couple of other projects that may or may not happen next year, which I'm really looking forward to getting involved with. So.
So, if you could pick out one project or event that you're most proud of, what would it be?
Oh, good. Well, I suppose, yeah. It's selling to Xerox, I guess.
Mm.
I mean, when Xerox approached us, they were mad keen, and they didn't want to just buy a printer. They wanted to buy a full service marketing business to help, them deliver their promises to their clients. And during that process, they were fantastic, but they were hard. And the fact that we went through all of the due diligence, and we got noted as being one of the best companies that they'd ever run due diligence through, was an
That's good.
amazingly proud moment. Not down to me. In I employed the CFO was fantastic, and my team were fantastic.
Yeah,
And that's what you need.
yeah.
So again, that was really my proudest moment, because sometimes when you talk about proud moments, it's nice to have an outcome to back it up,
Mm.
because a lot of what we do ends in nothing, if we're really honest.
Mm.
There's a few things that actually really go well, and
Mm.
that was one of them. So yeah.
And I presume that Xerox kept everybody on and contracts continued and so on, yeah?
Yeah, what I really love is the guy I handed over to, who was Dimitri Kiprianou, who we employed going about 2 or 3 years before I went. He'd come from Paragon Communities. He's a great lad. I shouldn't say a great lad. He's a man, but he's younger than I am.
Mhm.
Quite a bit actually, and he can play the guitar. I thought he's fantastic. But he's an amazing guitar. Anyway, blah blah blah. But they've taken that business on, and today I think the numbers, because he likes to share them with me, I think the numbers are around about 130 and 13, or may even be 13 and a half. I'm not
Wow.
absolutely true. I'll have to
So
check with
it
Darren.
was 97-10. Yeah.
97.10 to 130. And to be fair, I will say, in all honesty, it was good for Xerox, because they have put quite a bit of manufacturing in there, but nowhere near that amount, if that makes sense.
Mm. Mm.
So, and you're absolutely right. They haven't made any difference to the staff. So when I went, I worked with them for a year before I realised that it wasn't what I wanted to do. I could have probably rode it out. I could still been there.
Mm.
Darren Cassidy's sitting there going, "No, he couldn't." I'm joking. But, you
So
know, yeah. But
So who, out of interest, outside of maybe the world of printing and digital communication, etc., who who's been the most inspiration for you? It can be anybody.
oh, that's a really difficult one, because I kind of, the world. If you said to me, okay, industry leaders, I'd have to say, the guy who ran GE was an amazing leader. And interestingly enough, he used to cull 10% of his workforce every year, which sounds barbaric, but it
Mm.
just shows you around about, how important staff are, to your whole of your operation. And I can't believe I can't remember his name, but anyway, blah blah blah. But and I love Stephen Covey was an inspiration as well. The work he did, Seven Habits, is something I've always lived by. Um, I mean, in life, yeah, I'd go back to say Dave Gilmour is probably the best musician I've ever seen in my life,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
don't know really, and I can, lots of things. I have interest in so many things, from the Arsenal Mikel Arteta, is doing a great job, man management, etc. You do admire what he's doing at the moment. I'm sorry for any Spurs fans out there.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
sure there will be. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm sure
there
there will
will
be.
be. Yes, exactly. But I mean, it's interesting. I mean, if you were, I've seen the industry change. I the, the, my strategy that I talked to the board about, or when I say the board, the non-exec board that we had, investors, etc. I could see that the agents, advertising agency world was changing and was being compromised. More and more specialists were. I mean, in the old days, the agency would just make whatever money they really wanted to. They would sort out all of the printing, all the production, etc. You then got the Williams Lees coming into the world and basically saying, "No, hang on a minute, we'll cut this middle layer of fat out at the end of the day." And what they did was they took it from that, obviously, to that, to basically that, because they ended up going, "Well, we can't make any money out of this." And I could see that lead supply was working, and lead supply came in, and that's what we did well. On the back of getting in on a service contract and then developing more skills, etc., and almost then expanding into the agency world. And you can see that, going back to WPP, that basically looked absolutely unshakable going back in the day. And when Martin Sorrell had it, and there was so many WPP agencies, there was always, his strategy was always have two of his agencies at every one pitch. Now it's like being taken over by Havas, and Havas are owned by a Spanish company, and it's just going to disappear. So, the whole thing's changed, and the company I think has done really well during that is ITG, Inspired Thinking Group. So they were always one of the companies who I thought I would really love to be like them, hence go Inspire. I don't think I've told anybody that, but and these guys all came out of waste point of sale, didn't they? I think.
Did they? I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
So,
So
what do you think the impact of dare I use this phrase now, AI might be on the world of communications?
well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, AI, AI is something I use every day without fail.
Yep.
And if I'm not using it, I see it. I mean, I do use it every day, but I also see it in everywhere now. I'm not so sure that a lot of people who talk about it really understand what it is, reality, and how to use it. I mean, I read an article that Jeremy Walters at Paragon are going to invest massively in AI. I don't know what that would look like. I mean, I would worry that any massive investment in AI, what does that mean? Because it will change massively. And let me just take you on a little path, because I think very strongly about this. We live in a world now through the likes of AI that becomes very, very easy. If I need to order, I don't know, a ball for my Defender, which is just gone, I can find it on Amazon. I can have it here tomorrow. Not in Donegal, by the way, probably here for the weekend though. But if I was back in Stamford, it would come tomorrow. And all I need to do is I think I can buy that in about 3 clicks, and the final click is my card is loaded up, blah, blah, blah. And that is the way that we work these days. It is easy. If it's not easy and cheap, etc., so value for money, let's say value for money, I don't like the word cheap, we won't do it. And AI is massively helping that experience, from the likes of, if I want a pair of trousers, etc., I can take a picture of me and see me in a pair of trousers. It's pretty incredible these days what you can actually do with AI.
Yep.
But I do believe the thing that we have the biggest risk to all of this is our trust in AI, i.e., if we can see the risk, if it's a pair of jeans, if it's a new pair of shoes, if it's a watch even, we might buy that augmented by AI. I know people who have funds that are invested by AI, but they're not big funds. They are a
Hmm.
manageable amount where we don't want to lose it. Trust is an issue. Let's go back to my card store with Amazon. If all of a sudden there was a big fraud on my account, I would expect to ring my bank up and say, I didn't make these last two transactions. And my bank would say, leave it with me, we'll have the fraud team on it, and it would go away. However, the day that the bank then turns around to me and says, that's fine, Mr. Headley, when was the last time you changed your password? And I go, and they say, well, it does say on the T's and C's that you need to be changing your password every whatever. And if you haven't done that, you're not covered.
Yeah.
What that then says is I get very, very careful about this fraud, about me being frauded. And if that happens, all of a sudden, what happens to Amazon?
Mm.
How will they process the payment as quick? You know, my sister-in-law works for Donegal Oil. They had a cyber attack along with a lot of oil supplies over Europe, actually, with this computer system. It basically meant they didn't know how much was in people's accounts. They didn't have people's addresses stored and all the rest of it.
Right.
So they were literally out for 2 or 3 days. Nobody could take any orders or whatever it was. It was just, we'll take a note of it and we'll get back to you as soon as you can. Okay, it was sorted. But the reality was, anybody caught up in this, immediately they were worried. They were questioning that actually this
Yeah.
system they'd always relied on,
Yeah.
it's now failed. And
Yeah.
if it fails again this week, all of a sudden, I think there'll be a change in attitude to what you can trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
People become
think,
intolerant.
yeah. So I do
Yeah.
think then, we see the rate of change that we all know the curve, and the curve's now pretty steep. And people
Oh,
will
yeah.
tell you the rate of change today is slower than it's ever been at any time in your life. And we all nod and make that. But as they say, when you're talking investments, history is no proof of future.
That's right.
And all of a sudden we could have the absolute reverse of what happened in the Industrial Revolution, where we could literally stop and we could say, "I'm sorry, my card. I am not. My money's in my bank." Or how do I know it's there? Because I see some figures on a screen. The day they disappear,
Mm.
and then trust is lost, and all of a sudden our rate of change, I think, will massively, or will obviously will massively slow.
But what about robots? Going into doing repetitive manual, or not even necessarily manual tasks. I mean, having a robot in your home that does the things that you don't want to do, or it's there to keep you company.
I mean, the latter one is a fascinating one, which I'll come back to. So, throughout my latter years of work, really, it was all about, how do we get the cost down? Basically, you get the cost down by putting more productivity up, etc., and reducing manual handling. So we had all kinds of things on the back of our machines, robotics, etc., etc.,
Yeah.
which is fine. But interestingly enough, and we're starting to see this everywhere these days, it flies against the strategy of consumerism. And consumerism was obviously, I think, invented by Henry Ford, or first realized by Henry Ford, whereas he made his cars. But do you remember the most important thing he said about the cars?
Not that you can have any color as long as it's black.
As long as it's black. But more importantly, anybody who worked in this factory needs to be able to afford one.
Yeah.
That way he had his market.
Yeah.
Now, when you go to the airport and there's a bot, they don't need to catch flights. They don't need to take holidays. So what happens is all of this AI, and this AI gets wrapped up in all of this at the end of the day. What happens when there are no jobs? And people say, oh, there'll be other jobs.
Mm.
I'm not absolutely that convinced that there'll be that many other jobs. I think there will have to be a complete and utter rethink of everything we've taken for granted. So
Yep.
all of a sudden, why you won't want to be a solicitor, or you might want to be the real high flying one that talks in court, but you won't want to be the one that goes through the case notes, because you'll just use AI and it'll go bang, 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 bang,
Yeah,
bang.
but to get to the high flying person that appears in court, lawyer, who's going to, where's the training ground, and the
Yeah.
development of these individuals?
So the danger is this. I mean, this is the danger when they are, when they die out. Who's actually going to do that?
Mm.
But with the likes of blockchain and Internet of Things, etc., and AI, I think it's going to be fairly difficult to commit crimes anyway, quite frankly. So there'll probably be no courts. But
Mm.
this is a whole mind blowing thing. Best had
Yeah.
over a couple of bottles of wine or whatever. But it is really interesting when you start to look at AI and say, well, where does it start? Where does it stop? For me, and people around working age now, take full advantage of it. It will give you a lift. If you're not using it, you should be. It's fantastic. It's incredible.
Mm.
I used to have to go through my board report line by line and start looking at where there's differences, etc., make copious notes. It was a full-time job, and if my CFO is listening to this, he will say, "Well, I'm not so sure you read it that well. I probably didn't have the time or the inclination." If you feed a board report now into AI and just ask it,
Summarize. Mm.
it just comes down with a list, and you walk
Yeah.
into that agenda.
Yeah.
With that
Yeah.
agenda, it is fantastic. And we used to have a PA, or a exec assistant taking notes at the meetings, board meetings, etc.
Don't
AI
need
can do
that.
all of that for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a meeting this morning where it was all transcribed and all done
Yeah,
for me. The problem is because it makes you very lazy potentially, and you start using the creative parts of your brain, and it
yeah,
might disconnect us if we're not careful. Or disconnect us even more if we're not careful.
yeah. I mean, I think that the reality is, the whilst the likes of you and I are at an age where we've had the experience. So therefore, if I'm using some kind of crazy AI tool to design my kitchen, etc., blah blah blah, because they're fantastic, but then I look at it and I go and see that they've made that cupboard 9 foot tall, and I know my kitchen ceiling's only 8'6", because we all know that because we are
Yeah.
old, and
Yeah.
blah blah blah.
Yeah.
There's the thing, isn't it? That it's a case of, okay, I'll let you go, but I will know if you made any really silly mistakes. Whereas
Yeah.
the reality of the situation is, if it gets too mechanized, people necessarily won't know. And
It's,
then,
it's a little bit like a map, isn't it? Understanding where you are and where you want to go. If you've come from a background of seeing printed maps, remember the day. Um, my son's 26. Sometimes we'll be going from here to here, and he just has no idea about where
well,
places are.
no,
About time scales and how long it takes to get from this part of the country to this part of the country, because there's no sense of distance and location and so on. But if you've got it mapped in your brain, and
well, I
from
think that's
experience.
right. And we use sat nav now with sort of gay abandon. I mean, well, first of all, the revolution in satellite navigation wasn't about where you were going; it was telling you where you were. And I think that's a metaphor for life, really. At the end of the day, the most important thing is you need to know where you are, whether it be in business or any kind of facet of life, really. I mean, I was taking a car back to swap my car on Friday, and this particular car, it didn't have Apple CarPlay that I was taking down to
Mm.
London. And like a fool, I put it in the nav, and I've forgotten about old sat navs that they don't take any readings on traffic. So it had this route, and alongside I was going to be an hour late, because at the end of the day, it was the old sat nav that says, well, actually, I'll just take the distance, I'll divide it by the road, the speed the road can go, etc., etc. And we are these days, it is so accurate, but at the end of the day, we don't know why necessarily, if that
Mm.
makes sense.
Mm.
So there is that, and I think we've seen, whether it be in printing or in many facets, a big change. And we do need to adapt to those changes, and that can be fun. That can be a challenge. It can be very, very fulfilling as well, if that
Mm,
makes
mm,
sense. But I mean, it's interesting now. I mean, with printing, packaging does seem to be the place that I would bet my future on if I was there, because I think a lot of it is around, we need a box, we need something to put that thing in. That's not going to change.
mm,
A box of cornflakes needs, a nice box, if that, and
mm,
starting to see, things like these advent calendars now that were a thing and we didn't know what they were 10 years ago. Now that everybody does them, they've got all kinds of beautiful packaging, and
mm.
etc., etc. So I do think that that's good, and I do think that printing in that respect has got a presence moving forward.
Oh,
Um,
I totally agree. Yeah, that sort of tactile, physical
yes,
interaction of print,
because
you
we are
can't beat
human.
it.
Because we're human at the end of the day, and it
Yeah.
is rather like, it is interesting what you said about one AI bot for company. I'm not so sure. I think that's where we will see the absolute difference between, something that looks, could even feel like a human will never be human, because I think what we are is very, very special beings, and the people that we come across, we should be nice to and look after.
Mhm. Yeah, 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 definitely. So let me ask you,
Mm.
what would your previous colleagues say about you when you're not in the room, do you think?
Um, he was very determined. Um, he didn't suffer fools. Um, he used to shout. Um,
Right.
um, yeah, he was passionate. Passionate. Yeah, he was passionate. I think that is the reality of it. It was. I was never shy of saying what I thought. Sometimes to my own detriment. Sometimes I was right. But whatever happened, it was expedited. With some cadence, rather than sat on
Mm.
and left.
You weren't shy to express yourself. So
No,
what's the message you would deliver to your younger self if you could?
this was one that I have been thinking about, and it's a tough one, because I think there's, making the mistakes makes you who you are, and there's something very, very comfortable sitting here in my mid 50s to sort of say, um, I now know myself better than I've ever known myself. What would I say to my younger self? Go for it.
Yeah.
Go
Take
for
more
it.
risks.
Don't
Yeah.
let anybody tell you you can't, because you can. Um, but be nice to people. Be
Mm.
respectful. Um, I think I'm not saying I wasn't. I think most people who I work with, and would probably say yes, he had a heart of gold, but he wasn't. He was passionate. But no, the most important thing I would say is go for it. Go for it. You are only ever here once.
Yeah.
This isn't a
Yeah.
dress rehearsal. Um, yeah, that's it really.
Nice. Come on, tell us something about yourself that's extraordinary and maybe nobody's ever heard about before.
Oh, good gracious me. I headlined Glastonbury, Glaston Budget.
Did you?
Yes. Um,
Serious?
yeah. So the biggest fake festival in in the UK,
Right.
back in 2015. My band headlined it. Uh,
Seriously?
so yeah. I was mad keen musician. We that's probably it really. Um, that's probably the most fun I've ever had.
And so that was actually at Glastonbury.
No, it was Glaston Budget.
Oh,
That was
right.
in
Sorry.
no,
Sorry.
not
I got
Glastonbury. No.
it.
Oh, good gracious me!
I'm
I'm
thinking,
really
oh,
so. Now that's a massive anticlimax, now, isn't it? No, I'm afraid we played to around about 10,000 people, not
oh,
hundred
still,
thousand
no, that's
people.
still good. Still good.
It was still pretty good. But
And
no,
you
I
were
mean,
were you on the guitar and singing or just the guitar?
I was on guitar. I used to play in an indie band, and we used to cover everything from the Stone Roses to the Arctic Monkeys.
And
And
who's your favorite band?
I think, oh, good gracious me! Don't I'm so eclectic. I've just got tickets to go and see my favourite band who are playing in Toronto, minus
Yeah.
their drummer who sadly died. I got some tickets for Rush.
Oh, wow.
So Rush are my favourite
Wow.
band, but I am so eclectic when it comes to musical
Yeah.
taste. But actually,
Rush.
my wife got me tickets. I got bombed out, and she managed to stay in, and so we're looking forward to going to Toronto in August to go and see them. Um,
They'll be in their 60s,
yeah,
late 60s, won't they?
I just think they're 70s or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean this is the trouble. You see, particularly with bands, you start to see them these days, and people like Yes and people like that.
Mm,
They're all 70s and 80s. The Clash are in sort of that era, and
mm.
you start to realise, with Pete Townsend, Roger Daltrey, Mick Jagger, they're all 80s, 70s, 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And we haven't got long left with them in many respects. Who's the heroes coming through? That's what I want to know. But
And the characters. I was very lucky to meet Phil Lynott,
I will
lead
be.
singer of course, Thin Lizzy, for anybody that doesn't know. And after the concert, it was in the De Montfort Hall in Leicester,
I was there.
somewhere you'll know, I'm guessing.
I was born and bred. I guarantee I was there. It was the Thunder and Lightning tour,
Yeah, that's right.
1983.
Yeah, that was it. And afterwards, God knows how, but we were in the sort of back steps the sort of stairwell,
Yes.
and the band started walking down the stairs as I was going up, and I stopped Phil and said, "Look, can I have your autograph?" He was spaced out,
Yeah.
and he signed the inside of my leather jacket.
Fantastic. I remember on that tour, he used to do this thing where he had this bass guitar with like a mirror plate on it, and he used to shine it at the girls in the audience. And we had a chemistry teacher. I was at Lancaster Boys School in Leicester,
Yeah.
and he shone his thing. He picked out our chemistry teacher. He was a funny looking man, and he left it there. And he looked at him for a bit, and he pulled a face. Then he moved it on, and you could hear all these lads all in the audience going, "Hey!"
Brilliant,
Anyway,
brilliant.
yes, definitely at that concert.
Oh, amazing, amazing.
Yeah,
So, okay, my last question
yeah.
for you is what book or film or both, if you prefer, has had the most influence on your life?
Oh, good gracious me. Book Fever Pitch.
Okay. Fever Pitch, right?
You know what?
Not
You know,
read
you know
that.
what Fever Pitch is about.
No.
Fever Pitch is basically all about the Arsenal winning the League Cup title, before the Premiership, winning the league, and we ended up going to Liverpool on the last day, and we beat them 2-1. But it's all about. It was Colin Firth stars in the film,
All
and it's
right.
a
Okay.
fantastic, and it just captures what being a football fan was like back in the day. And I think the fact that he was so passionate about it, and nothing else worked. Like all the things, it probably translated better in the book than in the film, but they were both brilliant. And it kind of really showed what life was like and the magic from when he was a young lad on the terraces of Highbury, as it was then,
Mm,
to a grown up teacher, and then when they won the league, and really as he grew up, that was it, and it was never the same again. So
mm,
I think to me, it was follow your passions and make the most of it. If you're passionate about something, make the most of it. Do what you need to do. Don't hurt anybody while you're doing it. I'm not saying that,
mm.
but enjoy it.
You,
And because passion is something that is hard to come by sometimes. It's a lot of people, I think, struggle because they don't get passionate about something. If
Mm,
you're passionate about something, you're very lucky because you love it. You think about it a lot, etc., etc. And whether that is around, the Arsenal or Tottenham, other teams that are available, whether it's about
mhm,
sailing, playing a guitar, or indeed about work. And coming back to work, I was very, very lucky. I was so passionate about what I did with work that it brought me tremendous happiness,
mm,
um, which, if you can get that in life, you should be very grateful for it.
mm,
And
indeed.
yeah, I mean, and I'm a very lucky man.
Well, look, it's been, I'm very grateful to have had this
Good.
chat with you. Lovely to meet you.
Great.
Hopefully,
Thanks
we
for
will
doing.
get a chance to meet in person at some point.
Yeah,
I will send you a copy of my book because there's a bit about gratitude in there. So if you
lovely.
afterwards, if you can just ping me your home address and I'll send you a copy. But yeah, thanks for giving up your time.
No problem. And have a happy Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you. As you can see, we've got the tree up. Look,
I can see that. I
the
couldn't,
tree is up.
Yes, exactly. That's lovely, lovely. Super. Have a good
Yeah,
afternoon, sir.
keep healthy. All the
And
best.
you. Bye bye now. Bye bye.
Bye.